On this episode of Grimm Realities, we're going to talk about startups, specifically startups in the internet age. Hi, this is Grimm. Welcome to Grimm Realities. I want to talk about startup culture and the hype behind it, and I really want to burst some bubbles. That's kind of what we do here at Grimm Realities. We burst bubbles. The archetype of the internet startup, as you've probably seen on Silicon Valley, the show, which I've never really seen. I've watched like 2 episodes. But I know what you already think of the typical internet startup. Like I've said before, free coffee, super cool office, startup culture for internet companies, okay? You generally have companies that are going after large kind of network-driven exponential growth. And the strategy behind that is to prove a model, right, with a proof of concept, and then attract investor money and spend that money aggressively to try to get into the vertical portion or the very beginning of a vertical portion of what's known as an S-curve, where your revenue is beginning or your user base or however you judge success, right? Usually it's money, starts to really tick upwards in an aggressive growth pattern, leading to exponential growth for a period of time, and then eventually everything levels out because there's only so many people that could ever use one given thing. It's just the way it is. Let's call that model A of the startup culture on the internet. This other kind of mindset when it comes to startups is what I would consider people who don't even realize that they're involved in a startup, so to speak. They think more in terms of, I'm starting a business and I'm trying to make money. They're not caught up in the hype wave of, yeah, we got to be this cool internet company. Whoa, we got to have awesome, hats. I don't know who thinks about the hats. I just got really cool swag the other day, and I really love the hat I got. But you all know what I mean. You know what I mean. They're not trying to be the cool guys. They're trying to just make money. A lot of times these startups are literally one person with an idea and maybe some connections that they know they can sell to directly. So it's more real world based. Now, you don't have to be real world based. That's where we get this type A startup culture on the internet, because you have internet scale. You have the ability to actually go from a couple hundred to maybe a couple thousand users to millions of users. The startup culture B is more traditional, kind of entrepreneur-based, maybe one-man, three-man, or woman shows or shops that are focused on keeping their expenses low and their revenue above it. They want to be profitable right away. A much more modest approach to startup culture. So I'm going to talk about both of those in comparison, and then also I would call the type C, which is a hybrid of the two, which ironically where I work now, Cybrary, I consider a hybrid of the two, which is frankly the best of both worlds. So let's talk about startup culture A. Startup culture A, where the company is really going after exponential growth without concern for the spending of money. How are they able to do that? Well, they're able to do that because they're riding a hype wave, which brings in investors. Investors will give you money. Now, they'll give you money expecting you to hit that exponential growth. And if you don't, it gets really ugly really fast. But no one wants to think about that. So what you have is people trying to outcompete each other to hire the best talent, meaning that you have to outcool the other companies. You have to offer better healthcare, better, perks in the office. Maybe there's a jacuzzi. You're competing on coolness, okay? I consider this a fundamental less approach. You have no fundamentals if all you care about is how cool your company seems so that you can get the best talent. Hold on, Grimm Rant. I question if you're getting the best talent when it comes to that, because really the best talent probably is aware of the fundamentals of a business and why you actually want good, solid, money-generating fundamentals. If you don't have money-generating fundamentals, you're working at a temporary job. To me, the best talent is smart enough to understand that this type of culture, if it's not supported by rock solid money coming in to, sustain it, even if you're not quite there in terms of profitability, but so you're not burning through $500,000 in investor money every single month, which yes, I have witnessed, unfortunately. If you don't understand that, you're probably not the best talent out there, or you just haven't been through it yet, right? It's just your first go around, which I can't really blame you for, but you will be better once you have gone through the experience of watching a startup of type A burn itself out. Let's talk about startup type B. Startup type B is based around generating revenue. Overhead is minimized. Now, here's the downside of that. The downside of that is if you are the developer or one of the developers, you probably are the main overhead. So they're not going to try and pay you as well as startup type A that is trying to be super cool and, pay everybody awesome with other people's money. Hey, it's so easy to spend other people's money. God, it's weird. So that's the downside, I would say, is a startup type B is really, you're not getting paid unless you're succeeding. I mean, you're obviously getting paid, I hope. Please get paid, but you're not getting paid correctly unless you're really making money. And even if you're really making money, because of the mentality, because of the approach of that type of business person, they're probably still trying to not pay you that great. Now, unless you're the one who starts it, in which case you can just keep all the profits, and that's awesome. Here's the benefits of, or really the reality of startup type B, right? Where you're basing everything off of solid fundamental growth in your ability to generate money. You always are oriented properly around what matters for your business. Because like it or not, what matters for your business is its ability to exist. It cannot exist if it doesn't make money. Now, this comes into play with a lot of actual development decisions. You might have a scenario where you know that you can, as an engineer, that you can create an architecture that will be sustainable, will make your life really easy, right? As software engineers, we often like to make decisions that make things easier on us, which actually is a good thing, but it comes with a cost, and that cost is your time. In startup type A, you might be afforded the luxury of being able to do that because you're burning other people's money. But in startup type B, you have to generate revenue today or you don't pay rent this month. So you will make decisions from an engineering perspective that you know are only good because they're quick. So in type B, you might be encouraged to always take the shortcut, right? To always just get it done because it generates revenue. And over a long enough timeline, you can end up with a complete disaster of a code base and an unmaintainable, unsustainable, ungrowable application. So startup type B, its problem is that it's self-limiting, right? Because of the focus on profitability. But personally, I prefer that to startup type A, which is really you're just rolling the dice that you can burn through all this money and strike gold, and become the next Facebook, whatever. That's what everyone used to say. They're going to be the next Facebook. Guess what? There was no next Facebook. I prefer startup type B to type A when it comes to stuff like that. But let's go into type C, the hybrid approach. This is the peak approach. It actually, to me, it's sort of like iterative business development. Whereas you have iterative software engineering or software development where you create something fast, get it out there, and then you come back and improve upon it. And the key there is, on each iteration, you take into account the lessons that you learned from the prior iteration. That type of business, here's what it does. It starts out as a type B business. It wants to get a product, an offering, into the wild in front of users. It wants users to maybe pay for something, but at least be there. It's generating revenue from the get-go. There is revenue involved. Revenue proves what works. Then you can transition to the type A startup. You have an idea based on maybe 1 or 2 or 3 iterations of your actual product in the world. You then take what you've learned and you aggressively approach the market that you've actually identified. And you've actually identified it because you've actually got money flowing through the door. Then it's okay. It's okay to burn that money because you're actually chasing that true S-curve, which at internet scale, you can do. It's actually a real thing, and there are tons of successful businesses that do that. And this, I would call it iterative business development. I'm sure there's other names for it out there, but I don't really care. Personally, I consider Cybrary a type C business because Cybrary started off putting things out into the market and understanding that, hey, there's a need for cybersecurity training out there. There's like a hunger that's not being satisfied by other competitors. We reached a point where we became the largest cybersecurity focused training company in the world. That's crazy. And they did it really fast because we started with solid fundamentals, because we started as a type B startup. Now we can successfully transition to a type A startup, which really makes us a type C, right? We want to see how our revenue goes and then react and learn to where the opportunities are. To me, that's absolutely the way to approach startups. It's not the startup culture that's hyped online, and it's not the startup culture that I see a lot of people kind of get pulled into as the thing to look for. It's a different type of culture. It's grounded in reality. The conclusion is startup culture in the media is not startup culture in real life. It's the startup culture of failures. You don't want to be a failure. You don't want to work for a failure. Trust me, it gets real nasty. This is Grimm Realities.